I don't know about you, viewer, but playing games on the Wii always leaves me in a weird mood. It's like playing fetch with a stupid dog. Sure, it might not bring you back the stick every time, or it may do that thing where it gnaws on the stick and then growls at you when you try to get it back, yet the dog is adorable and the times where it actually wants to play fetch are usually fun. Yes, the Wii may only be able to output in standard definition because Nintendo and the graphics make Dead Space Extraction look like a high-budget PS2 game, and dealing with the Wii's nunchuck is always a science unto itself, but there are usually some good bits to go around to the point that it's worth doing the hassle. For those of you not in the know, because I haven't told you yet, Dead Space Extraction is the prequel game to the well-known Visceral series of Aliens adaptation video games except with zombies, Dead Space, which according to this game seems to have first been an obscure comic book series. The game revolves around the outbreak of the necromorph virus on the Ishimura and the planet they were mining at the time that happened after the government dug up a red marker, some sort of alien artifact doodad revered by the somehow widespread unitologist religion that only made the problem exponentially worse. You are put into the shoes of a security officer for most of the game and have only one objective: survive in the world in the company of a woman from the mining operations, a space captain, and an executive of the not Weyland-Yutani Corporation, and owner of the mining company. From this game, it looks like Dead Space isn't a series to mince words, since before the player is even given the privilege of controlling Straight Shoe McGraw here, we are instead playing one of the miners working with the marker they dug up, and quickly the entire operation falls downhill in quite spectacular fashion. The miners begin having hallucinations, hearing alien voices in their head, and killing themselves and others, and that's before the necromorphs ever make an appearance. Well, obviously it's before. How are the necromorphs gonna win this invasion without corpses to take over? At the end, our miner is taken down by the uninfected humans, and it's kind of shown that the miner has been killing his fellow men, and all the evil he saw was just marker hallucinations. The mining operation is put on an indefinite hold as the unitologist members who've gotten close to the marker have devolved into mental health uselessness. There have been mass suicides in the facility, and everyone else has been developing slightly lighter mental health issues, and the latest minor failure has only made the situation worse. Yet, things quickly spiral out of control there as well when necromorphs start killing fools and bonding themselves to our corpses to become even more powerful. The station falls into chaos, and our security officer friend has to save his new party members from the hordes. Half of the game takes place on the mined planet below the Ishimura, so you'll get used to the game's combat down here, which didn't try to be the unique third-person deal that Dead Space did the first time, and instead went for one of the only genres that the Wii can knock out of the park, an on-rail shooter. It definitely doesn't jive with the heavy narrative that Visceral is designing this game around, with the reticle being available for waving around in most of the game's frequent cutscenes. However, the freedom to move the reticle from cutscene to gameplay so fluidly means that it makes the game feel like one long continuous story rarely broken up, and the responsive movement of the Wiimote, if you can get a working nunchuck to help out, makes doing the game's door clicking, picking up items, and QTEs an integrated part of the rest of the game that doesn't feel out of place like it does with so many other gimmicks. Sure, some bits can still feel gimmicky, like the times that you'll have to turn the Wiimote sideways for the gun to execute some secondary attack in order to solve puzzles, but even compared to games like Metroid Prime 3, it still feels like there was an actual point to using the Wii's features to further gameplay. Then there's the shooting itself, which is top-notch for an on-rail shooter. You can move around the screen quickly, the enemies don't end up bum-rushing you to rack up damage all the time, your ammo clip is shown on the reticle to help user-friendliness, as well as on a button menu that can be brought up at any time. The game definitely hits the difficulty it was looking for to be terrifying, as you'll be faced with 5 necromorphs coming out of the floor, doors, and or ceiling most of the time. But with your access to weapons like the stasis launcher available for all guns, and the flamethrower, you still have the ability to crowd control and deal with enemies one at a time in spite of an entire mob coming for you at that time. And that's when you have to say that the decision for the original Dead Space to have necromorphs' weaknesses be chopping their limbs off when shots make the combat even more intense and challenging when you have to divide attention between getting enemies on the ground and watching the ones behind them or on the other walls around the player, so that they aren't getting you snuck up on. The different enemy types also fleshes out the combat to this fine-tuned, intense experience, as some necromorphs are faster than others, but are quicker to kill. Some necromorphs throw out projectiles, which are the most annoying since you can barely see them, and then there are some tentacle ones that are basically quickly damaging shooting gallery targets. And while I can talk up the combat and the great use of the on-rails aspect to help tell the game's story, that doesn't mean Dead Space Extraction walked out of class with marks of flying colors. One giant problem is the game's camera and how the game gives you zero control of what you're looking at, which is good for the game's ability to tell a horrific in-your-face story and make some nice visuals happen. It certainly doesn't help when you are trying to pick up items like health and ammo, which you kind of need in a back-to-the-wall shootout where the wall can contain murder zombies. And this wasn't an idea that Visceral left to the wayside. No, this camera dysfunction was deliberately designed because many times you'll notice that the game will put out weapon upgrades in location where you only get one chance to grab them as the camera swings around between two different shots. And that only gives you a second to grab the damn thing up, and when this starts happening at a point where you're desperate for supplies, it gets freaking aggravating. And don't even get me started on supply clauses where you only get one chance to see them. In order to open them, you have to shoot a fuse box first, and then click on the open button. If you mess that up, you'll never get another chance to grab extra damage for your favorite weapon. And then there's the other thing that misses a fundamental point of developing a horror game. Dead Space Extraction's flashlight, which is a glow stick in this game due to it being more economical for the government to purchase for its employees. And this would have been completely fine if it were available at all times, but surprise, surprise, it's not, and to an insane degree. The game's glow stick is only available for use at completely random sections whenever the game decides that it should be dark enough for it to make sense for the main character to dig it out of their pocket. And when I say random, trust me when I tell you Visceral meant it, because you could have the glow stick working for a long-ass corridor filled with 30 necromorphs, and then the second that you jump out, it just disappears without warning because Visceral said you weren't allowed to have that anymore. And there will also be dark places in this game where that glow stick buddy of yours will not come out to play. And this is just a nitpick, but it's pretty irritating that to light up the glow stick you have to shake the Wiimote. It doesn't turn off every 5 seconds, but still, I don't like freaking waggling the damn Wiimote when I'm trying to do other shit. Later on, after a ton of bullshit, the group will escape the mining planet in one of the company's private shuttles to escape up to the Ishimura for some odd reason. I mean, if you can give me a better idea than this being a Dead Space game, I'm all ears. And what a total surprise, the ship in command is also overrun with the necromorph virus and people are being transformed to left and right. Sure, you'll occasionally meet people who are still doing their best to salvage things and seem completely normal, but things become a literal killing field pretty damn soon. Assumedly, like the first game, most of the second half of the game is fixing a bunch of generic spaceship problems in order to evacuate the ship, which pokes more holes into the reason they came up here in the damn first place. There's really no difference between the first and second parts of this game, so it's the same QTE shooting and hacking fun you had planetside, but now it's in zero gravity. As the evacuation plan develops, we find out that the corporation man of the main characters was a unitologist minister after he sacrificed a doctor survivor to some necromorphs so that he could continue his secret agenda that revolved around the female survivor from the start of the game, gaining an immunity to the messages of the marker. Our friend the space captain ends up nearly dead over this by the corporation man's hand before he can contact the main character about it, although he does later die via random necromorph attacks, so fair is fair. The main character gets the shuttle up and running, and after he deals with a necromorph spider by chopping off his own arm in a gruesome display only rivaled by Heavy Rain's infamous pinky cutting scene, and heads down to grab his friends and get the fuck out of Dodge. Really fucking far out of Dodge. While the game goes through kind of its own motions in a sort of predictable manner, the infection grows at an oddly realistic rate since you start dealing with the odd mob here and there at the start of entering the Ishimura and looking to the bridge for intel, but when you get down to the shuttle to finally escape, it's like someone summoned the necromorph party flash mob and you have to kill your way through constantly spawning waves of desiccated flesh monsters to finally take off and hit the game's ending. And in tune with the game's theme, theme, the female miner tries to hail the ship of Isaac Clarke to warn them about the necromorph infection, and the radio doesn't work despite her constant pleading, and the game cuts to black after the main character's wounds turn fatal and transforms him into a necromorph, tearing off the head of the only person immune to the marker's caress. As you can guess from everyone looking at the console, the Wii was tailor-made for the continuation of the on-rail shooter, as an intuitive and quick-pointing nature of the Wiimote makes the shooting tightly controlled, easy to use, and open to a lot of modifications and additions to combat such as secondary attacks, QTEs, and melee attacks. That, along with the amazing story writing prowess of Visceral Games, makes Dead Space Extractions one of those titles that manages to use the features of the Wii to further the gameplay and integrate the usual gimmicks to support the core gameplay, rather than feeling like a developer just tossed the Wii a bone with a gimmick-riddled, boring mess created by a drunk staff of 7 people on a Saturday night shift. Also, it gets extra points for being one of the rare mature games you could get on the system that turned out to be a great use of an adult player's time. Hopefully the original game that was happening 5 seconds after this one will be another fun time, filled with horrible aliens, random screaming jump scares, and those kooky audio logs. But that's another story for another day. Until then, enjoy this final scoreboard. And I'll see you off the boat with a victory for gamers. I'll see you guys at the next Wayland Yutani board meeting, if you thank me kindly.